Hello, fellow birders. My name is Dennis Kania. Today we're going to be taking a closer look at water thrushes during spring migration. This is a topic that I discussed with the DuPage Birding Club last spring, and I think it's worth revisiting. I'm going to be using a mini tutorial PowerPoint that I used for that presentation. On the DuPage Birding Club Education channel, we'll be discussing all things bird related. And again, today we're going to be talking about water thrushes, in particular the northern water thrush and Louisiana water thrush. I wanted to introduce you to a guide that I use and refer to quite frequently. It's the Warblers of the Americas. It's an identification guide developed by John Curson, David Quinn, and David Beadle. I think the illustrations in this book are exceptional, and it's worth taking a look at. So, to start things off, I'd like to introduce you to a few key features that we should be looking at when we're looking at water thrushes. First of all, we have two species here. The upper images, which I'm circling with my cursor, you can see are the northern water thrushes. And we have two color variations here. Some of the birds are going to be very, very buffy, like this one here. And those are in the eastern region of the United States. And then on occasion, we run into some that are from the west that are much whiter, like this. So to start with, the supercilium, which is this line here above the eye, northern water thrushes is typically going to be very narrow and tapering down at the back end of the supercilium. And that's a feature that you definitely want to make note of. The next thing that when I'm looking at water thrushes, I try to look at is the area on the throat that's between the two malar stripes. And if you have a stippling pattern in between those two, that's a good indicator of northern water thrush. Also pay attention to the strength of the markings on the breast. If they're very, very strong, rather than diffused, then it's most likely a northern water thrush. And even on these birds that have a buffy underpart, you can see once you get to the undertail covered, which is back here, you can see that that's very white. So you can also see that here and here, all is very, very white. On Louisiana water thrushes, which we'll look at next, again, starting with the supercilium, you can see that it has this bold supercilium, and it usually widens after going behind the eye. And in the front, where it was possibly narrower, it'll quite often be buffy. So you'll get a bicolored supercilium, whereas the supercilium color in the northern water thrushes is going to be uniform. The underparts are much whiter, and we notice that we do turn to buff as we get to the lower flank area and then into the undertail coverts. And we see that represented here as well. The key point again to look at on the throat is that between the malar stripes, you can see that it's very clean. There's no stippling going on in this area here. These are graphs from the Fermilab bird page, and they represent the window of migration for both of these species. And you can see that we have many more records for northern water thrush than we do for Louisiana water thrush. Fermilab isn't particularly good for Louisiana water thrushes. Obviously, we don't get them showing up as frequently as other places. But you still get an overall pattern of what the window of migration is. You can see northern water thrushes are starting here in mid-April. As our data has been collected over the last 10 years, you can see that's kind of dropped off, and we're getting closer and closer to the beginning of May before we're seeing northern water thrushes. Louisiana water thrushes, on the other hand, historically have come earlier in April, and if you visit and look at data from other sites, you'll see that that's the case, that they're coming in earlier. So we usually expect to see Louisiana water thrushes a couple of weeks ahead of northern water thrushes. Some other sites that you might want to visit in the county in order to find Louisiana water thrushes would be places like Waterfall Glen, or Green Valley, the Morton Arboretum, Elson's Hill, and Pratt's Lane Woods. All of those do on occasion have northern and Louisiana water thrushes. So let's take a look at some actual photographs here. And these are all birds that show that very buffy color on the underparts and in the supercilium. These are all northern water thrushes that we'd expect would be in the eastern range. And so you can see all the features that I discussed earlier. You can see it's got the strong markings on the breast. You can see the throat area between the malar stripes. Here's one malar stripe and you barely see the other one here. You can see all the stipple markings in between the two. And so you get this dirtier looking throat area. So here's the supercilium again, and you can see that it actually tapers down quite a bit behind the eye. In all these cases, you can see it's kind of tapering down. So that's a feature we'd be looking for. And as I mentioned, the undertail coverts are going to be whitish on these individuals. So all three of these are kind of in that buffy range. And that's typically what we see here in DuPage County. On occasion, though, we do get northern water thrushes that are going to be much whiter, and these are the ones that would be in the western range. But you still see all the same features, it's just that they're whiter. The supercilium is going to be whiter, but it still tapers down. You're still going to see stippling in the throat area between the malar stripes. You're still going to see strong markings in the underparts, and you're still going to have white undertail coverts. So all those things are very consistent, once again, with northern water thrush. Here's a very, on this image down here below, you can see it's a very good representation of just how much stippling there can be in the throat area. Then when we take a look at Louisiana water thrushes, looking at this one here, you can see definitely that that supercilium is widening behind the eye. It really flares out. And you can't see the throat on this particular view, but we'll look at some others. You can see that the streaking is a little more diffused. You can see that the lower flank does have somewhat of a buffy area here, and that buff extends then into the undertail coverts. This individual is a little perplexing because I don't see that that supercilium is widening out, and that's why you need to have more than one feature in order to make a solid identification on these birds. When you look at the throat, though, you see that here's one malar stripe. We cannot see the other, but we can see the throat in between, and you can see that it's all clean. There are no markings there. You can also see in the flank area that it does get very buffy, and that buff does continue on into the undertail coverts. So we have multiple features here that are going to say that this is a Louisiana water thrush, so I'm going to overlook the fact that it's not widening out here. When we look at this image down below, this is just so that you can get a very good view of that area between the malar stripes that I have referenced. And here are the malar stripes. Here's one, and here's the other. You can see in between it's all very, very clean on this Louisiana water thrush, and on this northern water thrush you can see the little stipple markings making their way up into that area. So in review, we have northern water thrushes that typically have a buff wash to the supercilium and underparts, more often than not. We do have those individuals that might be white. We have a narrowing of the supercilium behind the eye, and markings in the throat between the two malar stripes. We have white undertail coverts, strong markings on the underparts, a small bill, and darker legs than what you would see on a Louisiana water thrush. They're pinkish, but they're not as bright pink as we'd have on Louisiana. The Louisiana water thrush has whitish supercilium that's buffier in front of the eye, and whitish underparts. A widening supercilium behind the eye, clean white throat between the malar stripes, buffy undertail covers, a buffy lower flank, and more diffused markings on the underparts, a larger bill, and very pink legs. In migration, we're going to find these two species probably in the same places, although if you look in field guides, they more or less say that Louisiana water thrushes prefer to be along water courses that's running water. But in migration, we'll find them both in the same places. They do tend to forage down in those low, wet areas, and so where we're going to be looking for these water thrushes would be down near the ground, and quite often around the edges of ponds or little floodles in the woodlands. So thanks for taking the time to view this video. Hopefully we have given you some bird food for thought, and I hope that you'll join us again for future exploring of all things bird related.